everyone, and welcome to another episode of the hit series, Mirror Lake, in which we build a theme park in the game Planet Coaster called Mirror Lake. And we're going to be building a roller coaster in between this sort of gap between the Emporium and the Revenge ride and the Artemis ride. So the Artemis is the big yellow one, Revenge is the white building, and the Emporium is the only one I've not talked about, that big building with the clock on it, all of which were built in previous episodes. A link to the full playlist is in the description. But yeah, I was trying to think of a good thing to put here in this space for a while. I tried having a sort of wooden roller coaster fit, but it just looked a bit weird having it there. So in the end, I went with a dive coaster. The initial inspiration was Oblivion at Alton Towers, which is the only dive coaster I've actually ever ridden on, and it is a great ride. If you've been to Alton Towers, you know what I mean. It's very, very short and minimalist. It's essentially just a giant vertical drop, and it kind of dips underground, does a sort of overbanked curve, and that's it. That's the end of the ride. So it does sort of leave a lot to be desired in terms of its length, but for what it does very well. You kind of get this really nice sort of G-force at the bottom of the drop, and you know, you get some nice air time, but it's all about the drop really, and that's what it's about. But I thought I could improve upon this concept and build an actual roller coaster after the first drop. So obviously there is that limitation of space here. We didn't have much room to go crazy with the amount of things we could do, but in a way I kind of like sort of building to limitations and things, because then you have to, I don't know why, to be honest. That's the end of that thought process really. But I thought usually throughout this series I've cut out kind of the bits that I didn't end up keeping, or you know, showing off like just to keep the video length shorter really. But some people said that they prefer just watching the building process, and I've noticed that other I was about to say Kerbal YouTubers, Planet Coaster YouTube videos, they generally don't cut out the things that they get rid of in the end. They show the entire thing. Whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but it seems to work for most people. And if people want to see more roller coaster building, then you know, I can do that. So this is me building the ride. I dug this little pit here, again, because of the kind of inspiration of Oblivion. Oblivion kind of has this big pit that it drops into. Obviously not to the extent that this one is. The Oblivion pit is basically just a tunnel that goes under the paths and then shoots up again on the other side to do the big overbank turn. But, you know, just so this thing isn't, like, ludicrously tall, I suppose. I don't know, I guess I kind of like the idea of having the track drop, like, right next to where the people are walking. So I hope that made sense. I feel like I was about to go somewhere there and I just totally didn't. But, you know, we're kind of getting close to the end of the ride construction, or at least the track design itself. I didn't keep this colour in the end. I kind of followed the theme of being inspired by Oblivion and went for basically all. I was about to say, oh, let's not spoil it, but whatever. It's not exactly a big spoiler. I mean, if you've seen the thumbnail of this video, which I don't know how you could have possibly watched this without seeing the thumbnail, we went for a black design with a just orange a touch of orange, just to, I don't know, make it look less plain, I suppose. I don't really know where I'm going with this. So you can see me now just sort of finding a way to sort of make the two ends of the track meet before we can get on to the actual, well, I guess just completing the ride really. So this is our basic layout right here. You can see it fills the space quite nicely. It doesn't look too obtuse in the way it's built, and obviously we can do, there we go, selecting the color scheme there. I played around with yellow and black for a bit, but in the end I thought orange and black just looked a little bit better, especially because this kind of roller coaster is, I don't know, I mean, I would consider dive coasters to be fairly scary, given the fact that you're hanging over the edge of that big drop for a significant period of time. I think Oblivion, it's 3 seconds. I'm assuming they've emulated that in subsequent dive coasters and obviously in this game. 3 seconds feels a hell of a lot longer when you're up there looking down at the ground. But there's a little drop there. We can see the smoothness, but we can just skip through this part of the video and just, you know, we'll show the time lapse at the end. So at the moment, I'm currently panning around trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the actual scenery here. So I thought, in the interest of realism and the fact that this park, I mean, it has scenery, but it's not really like Disney levels of scenery. It's fairly basic, more along the lines of sort of Alton Towers and Six Flags, especially Alton Towers really, actually, where there's kind of historic buildings around the park, but the actual, you know, park specific scenery is all fairly, well, I guess no, because Alton Towers does have pretty nice scenery, whatever. let's just skip over what I'm trying to replicate here, because I'm not really trying to replicate anything. I'm just fencing off the ride at the moment to make sure, you know, the kids, those pesky kids, can't climb into the enclosure, the actual ride itself, because, I mean, you know, it's not like it's a wild animal. I mean, metaphorically it is. It's a crazed beast, but in a literal sense, it's a piece of metal. So, not quite sure what point I'm trying to make here. But you can see the fence here doesn't quite touch the ground now because of the unevenness of the terrain. So I placed these walls just to serve as a sort of foundation for the fence. We can just run this around the actual perimeter, and then we'll place the fence on top. And I feel like the video kind of did all that explaining for me, so I'm not quite sure why I felt the need to articulate it. Mainly to fill time. These videos are very long. And, you know, I do struggle to think of things to say for the entirety of the video sometimes. But you should still like the video. I'm not going to be one of those guys that be like, guys, we've got to hit, you know, I've got to smash that like button, you know, hit the notification bell, do subscribe. Do subscribe though. But I don't know. I just never really liked the idea of, you know, asking for likes and things, because I feel like if the video is good enough, people should hopefully like of their own accord. Although, it has been shown statistically that asking for likes and subs does increase likes and subs. So maybe you guys should consider liking the video. I'm going to get away from this. I'm going to get away from this topic now. Well, you know, let's pretend that didn't happen. No, I'm not going to edit it out, because I do need to fill this space. And, you know, I'm trying to claw at every chance I can get to fill the space at this point. So we're going to just continue on. I'm still digging a hole for myself, just like the hole for this roller coaster. So in a way, this all comes around quite beautifully, doesn't it? So there's the Emporium Raceway. Actually changing the subject now. I realised that, you know, it might look a bit weird having the fence climb this hill, like, to the level of the terrain. I feel like I tried it. I have cut this out from the video. Look at that editing. But I decided it looked a bit naff. But then I thought, well, the Emporium Raceway is still a little bit exposed, that people could theoretically climb that hill and get into the tunnel that the track goes through. So we may as well just extend the fence to cover the actual Emporium Raceway itself. The other side of it is still very much exposed, so I will go around and solve that as well. And, you know, I took the same approach I used for the log flume coaster and used the like big boulder pieces to finish off the enclosure, because obviously the fence eventually just disappears into the hill and it's very easy to walk around. So, you know, in the interest of safety, we implemented some boulders. But there we are, putting the fence. I mentioned this in my last video, you know. I keep saying, oh, so when I've run out of things to say, I'm like, well, here we are. So here we are, you know. But like all these, I'm trying to cut down on these filler sayings, but, you know, sometimes but you know sometimes it is I'll be the first to admit that I'm not always the best at doing this sort of thing, but whatever. This is me finishing off the fence. I couldn't really find a way to sort of get it cleanly done, so I kind of made this very crude thing. I mean, I don't know why, because you can't even really see it when you're actually panning around the park. Obviously the Planet Coaster guests aren't suicidal by nature, so it's really only here just to fulfill my own weird kind of OCD sense of mind, I suppose. But it's here now, so just in case people who would download this park, which is going to be in the final episode of this series, I'm going to upload it to the Steam Workshop, but just in case you did download this park, you might have your OCD satisfied by having all appropriate areas fenced off. But I mean, that's kind of the completion of the roller coaster and of course the fencing itself, so nothing more to do really other than add the path and of course make the station. So if in case you remember from the earlier episodes, I kind of stated that the park is kind of spans 3 generations of buildings. So there's the initial buildings that were from an almost medieval period, which is the folly on the hill. You can't see in this shot, so it was a good time to mention this. But there is a sort of folly building on the hill, and the actual park entrance itself and the bridge leading over the lake are very old. Then in the second generation, there was sort of Victorian 1920s era construction of like, I don't know, like waterfront attractions and things. And then we have the latest generation, which is built by the park owners themselves, and this is all very modern constructions, but also fairly minimalist, not too detailed, just prefabricated stuff. And you can see it going up now, particularly for this building. I kind of wanted the actual structure of the ride to do most of the talking, particularly because it's obviously so close to the path that the guests can see, you know, pretty much the entire track very easily. And I didn't want to have a really complicated station building or something that would detract from the actual construction itself. I wanted kind of the actual, you know, well, the roller coaster track to be the main sort of scenery, if that makes any sense, rather than having it sort of overshadowed by some fancy station building. So that's kind of why I went, and also because I'm lazy. But that's the reason. That's the excuse I'm going with for having a fairly simple station building. You can see me here fighting against Planet Coaster's building tools again. I'm not. I know that I've seen proper builders now, how the ways in which you can get around that. So the next time I have to build a station building, I'll be much more prepared. I didn't really do any research for this video because, of course, I didn't. When it came to, you know, sort of working with Planet Coaster's building tools rather than against them. But, you know, for this series, I didn't. So there's that. But well, I mean, this is coming together beautifully. I think I was just sort of watching the track go around here, making sure the car can still get around at a reasonable speed. But, you know, it's coming along well. So, in fact, apart from finishing off the roof of the station, there's not a lot else to add. I thought it might be a nice idea just to flesh out the rest of the structure to sort of encompass as much of the block break section as possible. But, you know, ultimately, like I say, less is. I kind of took the approach of less is more when it came to the station, because I thought that the actual structure of the coaster was quite satisfying, and like I say, being so close to the path, it didn't really need a lot of theming to really sort of, you know, promote itself, like, for want of a better word here. But yeah, whatever. There we are, just finishing off the walls. There wasn't really a lot to it really with this coaster, so I was just playing around with a few different scenery options to add to the walls. But ultimately, I decided, you know, well, like I said earlier, I didn't really feel the need to go too overboard with the theming of this ride. So I went for kind of sort of a minimalist looking roof. So in the end, I kind of went for that, you know, fairly standard corrugated. Is that corrugated iron? I could rewind the video to check, but I won't. And then, of course, the sort of generic steel roof that I used on the Argus station. Nothing else really to do now other than just to close off those exposed archways. And, well, to be honest, that's pretty much, once we've done that, there we go. And there we are. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the ride done. So I was just panning around trying to think of a good way to fill that sort of blank white space. In the end, I just kind of decided to go for a fairly minimalist sort of ride sign. And I just called the ride Terror because that's the emotion that people will hopefully, well, you know, probably be feeling when they ride this thing. Whenever I went to Alton Towers, Oblivion always seems to be that one ride that people are scared of riding. Like, if you're going to be scared of riding any of the rides at Alton Towers, it's usually Oblivion. For me, it's Rita. I just hate launch coasters, as I mentioned in a previous episode where we built a launched coaster. I don't know why. It just feels so unnatural to me. Like, I know Oblivion is a faster ride, I think, or at least it was. I know they've upgraded Rita since then, so it might be faster than Oblivion now. But Oblivion, initially at least, was a faster ride, and the acceleration was faster as well, because it was just a drop rather than a launch system. But I was never really put off by that. I think because the actual drop, it makes sense in my head. Like, the actual launch of Rita just doesn't, like, when I'm hanging over the edge of a vertical drop, like on Oblivion, my brain thinks we're going to fall at a fast rate. That makes sense to me. When I'm just sitting on Rita, then suddenly you just get thrown forwards unexpectedly. It takes me by shock, you know. My simple mind can't comprehend that, and then I just get freaked out. I don't know. Maybe I should stop talking and digging myself a hole about how much of a coward I am. But I don't know, that's why I've always kind of thought Oblivion was better. But going back to the actual topic of choosing the name for this ride, Oblivion tends to be the one that people are scared of the most. So I'm guessing people would probably be scared of this one as well, even though there are rides here with bigger vertical drops than this particular one. Namely the Artemis, which is a flying ride that has a giant vertical drop, bigger than anyone in real life. So, I mean, it probably wouldn't work in real life. The actual restraints would probably give way to under the G-forces, but whatever. This is a game, and in this game, it works. And trying to think of rides I would be really interested in riding in real life, that's something that would be quite cool, I think. Dropping headfirst towards the ground from a massive height. I think that'd be quite rather exciting, wouldn't it? So, I mean, yeah, the best way of just sort of filling empty space at this point in Planet Coaster is just to use trees and nature to sort of fill the gaps. And I think it ends up looking quite nice, sort of shooting. I was about to say soaring, and then I said shooting, so it kind of goes shooting. But my terribleness at commentary aside, that's pretty much this ride wrapped up. So I guess we can just end this video with just a nice POV of the ride itself. We can of course skip through the lift hill, and I messed up the block brakes, well, as in I didn't implement block brakes correctly, so there is a bit of a weight at the top, but it gives riders a nice opportunity to contemplate life and, you know, things like that. But that out of the way, we can, you know, get to the actual, you know, the good part of this ride. You may have noticed the other things in the background. That's a tease of what's to come in this series, which is admittedly not that many episodes left now. We're pretty much almost there in terms of, you know, finishing the park. There's a couple of roller coasters and a few flat rides. We can probably condense to about like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 videos. And of course I'll end this series with a cinematic overview of the park. But, you know, I've kind of talked over the entirety of the ride, but I hope the footage on screen kind of does all the explaining for me. There's a lovely shot of our go-kart track there. And there we are, finishing off the final sort of inversion. Small heartline roll there to get to the end. So it's a little bit jerky towards the end, but I think that ultimately, I mean, it was kind of the only option I had when it came to, you know, getting this thing back to the station in the confined space I had. So, I mean, that's pretty much, well, there we are, pulling into the station, the floor can rise up and the gates can close, and we can disembark from the carriage. And that wraps up this ride, and indeed wraps up this video. So, on screen now, on the left is a link to the previous episode of this video, and on the right-hand side is a link to the next series of this video. If that episode isn't out yet, it's just a link to the full playlist. Other than that, thank you for watching. Twitter, Patreon, Discord all in the description, and have a good day.